From firing 600 rounds a minute to bringing down large game, here are 9 of the most powerful handguns on the planet. Number 9. Smith Wesson 500. You're going to hear the name Smith Wesson a lot on this list, and for good reason. This company makes a lot of powerful weapons, especially when it comes to pistols. So it's only fair that I start off with one of the biggest and baddest weapons they ever made, the Smith & Wesson 500. Does it seem big to you? Well, fun fact, this thing really is bigger in person, and I mean that in the most menacing way possible. This gun fires a 50 caliber round with such power that no matter how experienced a gun user you are, you're going to feel the kickback once it fires. If you're not careful, it can literally send you stumbling backwards. In fact, this gun is so powerful that some people don't even call it a gun. They prefer to call it a hand cannon, and you can see why. This baby was built with the power to kill some of the most dangerous game on the planet. If you have an itch to take out a grizzly bear or an elephant with nothing but a pistol, the Smith & Wesson 500 is what you're going to want. For your sake though, don't miss. Number 8. Uzi Submachine Gun. The Uzi is an Israeli super machine gun. While it's not exactly a pistol per se, it is considered a handgun because, like a pistol, it can be wielded with one hand. When Israel was first created, right away it was under attack by its Arab neighbors. If it wanted to survive, they needed to defend themselves by any means possible. They didn't have any weapons and could only get armaments and fighter planes by smuggling, so they started to develop their own. The Uzi was very much a revolutionary gun. Unlike regular pistols or handguns, the Uzi could be semi-automatic or automatic, firing 600 rounds a minute. The magazine was placed in the middle of the weapon to balance it like a pistol, and it was very easy to load. While it was not the standard weapon of Israeli infantry, it had a short range and was useful for urban areas. Despite it being developed for the military, the Uzi has also been used by many law enforcement agencies around the world and has also gotten into the hands of many gangs and cartels. Interesting fact, the man who created and patented the Uzi, Uzi El-Gal, did not want the weapon to be named after him. And now for number 7, but first, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss out on the latest videos. Number 7. Colt 1911. Time and technology have made it so guns advance at an incredibly high rate, and every year, bigger and better models are being tested and produced. To have staying power, you must be the best of the best. And that's exactly what the Colt 1911 has been over a century. If you can't tell by the name, the gun was developed and released in 1911, which means the gun has been in use for 107 years. The Colt 1911 was made by the legendary John Browning and was considered his masterpiece. John Browning is referred to as the father of modern firearms because he created many innovative designs. When the gun came out, it was an instant hit with just about everyone. So much so that the U.S. Armed Forces used this gun as their standard sidearm for 70 years. Even though the military has traded up, doesn't mean people don't use it anymore. In fact, the Colt 1911 is considered one of the best competition pistols in the world, and it's so easy to use that many people have it as a protection sidearm in their homes. With a 7-round magazine and a 45 ACP bullet, this gun has lethal power to spare, and you can understand why people have liked it for so long. What about you? Are you a fan of this gun? Number 6. 1847 Colt Walker. Necessity is indeed the mother of invention, and the same applies to guns. If you think about it, many guns had to be designed for specific purposes as warfare evolved. In 1847, 2 legends of war came together to make a gun that some claim was the most powerful gun the military ever used. Enter the 1847 Colt Walker. So how did this gun come to be? Well, it started with a Texas Ranger named Samuel Hamilton Walker, who noticed that on the battlefield, the guns that were being used just weren't that efficient. He wanted to wield something that he could not only feel comfortable with, but know that when he fired it, the bullet would go where he wanted it to, and stop who he was aiming at. Enter the one and only Samuel Colt. Colt is a legend in the gun business as he was one of the first to set up a firearms design company. Colt had made guns before and they were popular, but with Walker's help, he made things even better. In 1847, they made the Colt Walker revolver. This baby could fire 6 shots in pretty fast succession, and with its 9-inch barrel and 44 caliber round, it had accuracy and stopping power. Timing helped make the Colt Walker even more popular, as this was around the time of the Mexican-American War. Sure enough, soldiers gravitated to the gun. Walker himself was very proud of the weapon and noted that he won a lot more battles because it was in his hand. The gun wasn't perfect, and in inexperienced hands, it did cause problems. But hey, that's probably always the case. And many future models were based on the Colt Walker. It truly changed history, and it was definitely one of the most powerful guns ever. Number 5. Smith & Wesson XVR 460 Magnum. Remember number 9? Well, this is like its big brother, and it shows in many ways. To be fair, there are a lot of similarities between this gun and the 500, but there are a couple of major differences. One, the Smith & Wesson XVR 460 Magnum has the distinction of having the highest velocity ever in a big-bore handgun. This thing fires a bullet at a whopping 2,300 feet per second. That's insane! Which leads to the other big difference. This gun actually has a stand you can use for it as well as a scope. Think about that for a second. This gun is so powerful that it actually recommends that you use a stand and a scope to use it. Pretty powerful stuff. Number 4. Thompson Center Contender G2. You might think that putting a scope on a handgun is a relatively new idea, but that's not the case. For example, the Thompson Center Contender G2 was made and released in 1967 along with a scope. Unlike some of the Smith & Wesson guns, the Contender G2 was built not just for excellence, but for elegance. It's smooth, got great lines, and it just feels like something you can control perfectly. The Thompson Center Contender G2 is a single-shot gun, and it has a break action, so it's not as fast as other guns on this list, but it makes up for it in other ways. First off, the gun can wield many different calibers of rounds, so if you need to go small or big, you're set with this one gun. Plus, between the design and the scope, the Thompson Center Contender G2 is a very accurate weapon. Hunters have been using this gun for a long time, and they haven't regretted it that often. Number 3. Colt Peacemaker. If you want to talk about classic guns, there are a few that stand out in the history books, and one of them just so happens to be the Colt Peacemaker. Dubbed the gun that won the West, the Peacemaker was a gun that started out as a military weapon, then made its way to cowboys, then civilians, then back to the military. This weapon is so legendary that it's been featured in numerous films, TV shows, video games, and is actually still made today. Interestingly enough, the history of the Peacemaker is just as important as the gun itself. It was made in a time where firearms were advancing. Colt, the company, not the man, Samuel Colt was long gone at this point, had to adapt on the fly to make not only a more powerful gun, but one that was durable, accurate, and was easy to use. They succeeded. The gun was advanced in a lot of ways, and even when used alongside a very reliable Smith & Wesson pistol, the Peacemaker was a favorite. This gun was used by many legends in history, including George S. Patton, Theodore Roosevelt and his Rough Riders, and several of the men who fought in the legendary battle at Tombstone, Arizona. This weapon has been used in movies by John Wayne, James Stewart, Clint Eastwood, Kirk Douglas, and many more, and was seen in many films in the early 1900s as authentic weapons of the West. More powerful guns have come out since the Peacemaker, but it's important to honor history. Number 2. Smith & Wesson Model 29 Classic. Dirty Harry and the classic line, "Do you feel lucky, punk?" is what cemented the Smith & Wesson Model 29 Classic as one of the most legendary weapons in the history of weapons. Used in the original Dirty Harry movie as well as Magnum Force, the gun is very powerful, and for a long time you wouldn't have been wrong with saying that the .44 Magnum was the most powerful handgun in the world. It certainly was when it arrived, and it actually kickstarted a desire to have bigger, better, and deadlier guns. Deadlier guns, that sounds like an oxymoron, but I'm sure it's something that Dirty Harry would have loved to say in his movies. Number 1. Desert Eagle 50 caliber. You've seen the Desert Eagle in Predator, Snatch, and other movies. Like certain other guns on this list, the Desert Eagle wields the mighty 50 caliber round and is about as powerful as semi-automatic handguns can get. This weapon is not for the faint of heart. This gun has a kick to it, and it's majorly powerful. If you're a novice, stay away from this gun. But if you have some experience, yeah, this might be for you. It is considered one of the world's most powerful handguns. The reason is because it uses a gas-operated mechanism to reload that is usually found in a rifle. A new bullet is then loaded into the firing chamber. The gun is very sleek, and it's the biggest magazine-fed handgun in the world today. That means it's easier to reload and can be much more handy in a fight over revolvers. Not to mention, this thing can stop just about anything, which is kind of the whole point when it comes to having a handgun. Thanks for watching! Which one was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!